Hi everybody, this is Hillary Ellers coming to you from Lightworks Studio, and we're going to go into the second part of the individual and the collective. And I hope you saw the first part. In fact, I want to recommend that you watch the lessons in order. They'll mean a lot more to you. So we've been talking about the collective and what is the collective, how do we relate to it, how does it relate to us. Where is the collective stored? And I think that's an interesting question. Like, it's not visible. So the collective is stored on the inner planes, which means one of the dimensions above the physical. Now, I may change my mind on this because no one's ever told me where it's stored, but our etheric bodies hold memories, and any time that you have any trauma from one of your other lifetimes that has not been resolved, it is carried forward and it resides within your etheric body. So when you have, for instance, body work done, not only the physical body is manipulated and worked on, but at the same time, the etheric body is worked on. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I've got a great story to tell you in a few minutes about one of the experiences I had about one of my traumatic experiences that was stored in my etheric body that came to light during a body work session. And sometimes body work helps us clear stuff. It helps us clear our feelings and things. This is why. Because as the body work is done, the etheric body releases the memory of the trauma. I just love that. I think that's so neat. So, we were talking about the collective stores everything. And your assets are stored in the collective, but also your detriments are stored there too. Sometimes the collective swings out of balance, and it may take on an overwhelmingly negative charge. And I kind of wonder if some of that's what's happening now in the world. And because the world conditions seem to be growing more and more harsh and more difficult, and in some ways really more and more negative. So my assumption is that the collective right now is also in a very negative place. But when this is happening, it is happening to help humanity actually clear something. So it's not a bad thing, even though it doesn't feel great. So what we're saying now is that anytime the collective swings very far out of balance, anyone who is highly sensitive to the collective can actually become a channel, and they can channel a lot of the energy in the collective through themselves and through their lives. there's a lot of thought that Hitler was such a person, that he was someone who was channeling the overwhelming negative that existed in the collective. And you know, at that time in history, there was a great belief that many people held, and I think that this philosophy is called eugenics. It's a philosophy that there is a superior race, and that some people are just biologically and mentally, whatever, superior to others. It seems as though Hitler acted tremendously on that thought, that philosophy within the collective. And even though it was a horrible action that so many people, innocent people, were killed, that action actually helped to bring the collective back into better balance. And I hope we don't get to that point again in any way, so that it's necessary for such immense atrocities to happen in order to release the negativity in the collective. But positive events also affect the collective, and certain people, saints, so to speak, are very, very good people. Choose someone that you admire, that you think is an extra special, wonderful person. And that person is also channeling part of the positive qualities in the collective. So it's not just a negative action, it can be also a positive one. For people who are most wired into the collective, and when I say that, I mean people who are more hooked up to the collective, and some people are more hooked up than others. This can show up in your astrological chart. And if you understand astrology, you can look at your chart yourself and determine this. Or if you don't understand astrology, have an astrologer look at your chart and ask them these questions. Find out what's going on in your 11th house in your natal chart. Also, how are Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune aspected in your natal chart? And those things will tell a lot about how wired you are into the collective. People who are most wired to the collective tend to have a collective work they do with more people. They tend to work with groups or more people. They often have a public role, and their work reaches a kind of largeness many times. There can even be a sort of ripple effect with people who are very wired into the collective, and by that I mean the effect of your life may not be fully felt when you're alive, but if you have a big effect on the collective, even after your death, your having been here on Earth will have a big effect on the collective. Now, I'm asking you or suggesting that you pay more attention to your connection to the collective and begin to let yourself feel, just like our meditation we did last time. Let yourself feel how the collective actually affects you, but also how are you affecting it. You can actually call on the collective for help. When you need help, ask the collective to help you. All new ideas come through the collective, and it is said that at least 7 different individuals receive new ideas, and we would think of these maybe as inventive ideas. And you know, it's often, not often maybe, but it has been noted that at times inventors will apply for a patent even on the same day. And so one inventor may be able to gain the patent just by hours. And obviously something was floating around for these 2 people to be tuning in to the same idea. That was new. So, through your connection with the collective, it's possible to, in some ways, merge with other people. That may not sound like a good thing, but it's a positive kind of merging in which you gain abilities you normally wouldn't have. Now, I've had some wild experiences with this. I'll just give you some examples. All right. I cannot carry a tune, but I love to sing, but I can't carry a tune. One time I was singing with a friend of mine who's a music teacher. I wasn't getting music lessons or voice lessons, but we were just horsing around singing together, and all of a sudden, get this, I started singing harmony to his voice. I have no idea how to do that. I mean, none. And I was even surprised, but I just kept right on going with it. And at the end of the song, he turned to me and he said, "How did you do that?" I guess he knew I couldn't carry a tune. And I just said, I just thought it would sound good. And that's kind of how I did it. It was just like, this would sound good. But I believe I was tuning into something beyond myself. Now, one time I was with a group of friends and I had bongo drums, but believe me, I was not a bongo drum player. I'm not quite sure why I got them, maybe just for fun and hoping I'd learn how to play them. But I was with 2 different men, and they were, I mean, really good at the bongos. And they were playing their bongos, and I was sitting on the floor with them, and I just started playing, and do you know, I kept right up with them. I mean, I was playing right along with them. And while I was doing it, I was surprised. I was like, how am I doing this? How is this happening? But I just did it. And they never said anything to me. I guess they didn't know. I really didn't know how to do that. But I believe that was another example for me that I was somehow merging with them, and I was taking on some of their abilities. Now, this last one's a doozy. It's even hard. This last one's even hard for me to believe. One time I was sitting at a little small table with a friend of mine. Now, if my friend hadn't been there, I would never believe this happened. Even I wouldn't believe it happened. And there was a deck of playing cards sitting on the table, and we were talking. And I just picked up the cards and I started shuffling them while we were talking, you know, kind of giving my hands something to do. I was playing with the cards, and I threw down a card, and I threw down like the ace of hearts or diamonds. I think it was a red suit. Threw down the ace and kept on da-da-da-da, talking, la-la-la-la. Threw down the two of hearts, da-da-da-da, bump, bump, bump. Three of hearts. I went through the entire suit in order. There's no way I could have done that. I mean, I couldn't do that again. I wish I had a video of it. But I don't believe, anyway, I could do that again in a million years. I don't know how I did it even, but I just had a feeling. In fact, probably I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just throwing down cards. And my friend was definitely impressed, believe me, much less to say I was too. You know, sometimes the collective affects people in terms of group karma. And Edgar Cayce taught about this and spoke about it. He talked about a belief he had and information he received that a lot of people who are alive in America during this century, and maybe the 1900s, that's when he was alive, but at this time, a lot of people who are alive in America were also alive as a group in Atlantis. And he feels, Edgar Cayce feels, that somehow this group, those of us who are here, that we were alive when Atlantis sunk, and that we either helped to sink it or we tried to save it, and that somehow we're back together again in a way as a kind of challenge or kind of testing to see if we're going to do the same old dumb stuff again. And here we are. Hopefully we learn something. A lot of times there is a belief that groups actually incarnate together, and that that will show up also astrologically through the placement of the outer planets, which are the planets out further away from the sun. It will show up through the outer planets in your chart. And you know, people, the outer planets are sometimes called generational, because a generation of people will have the same configuration. And that means, on some level, they share some kind of common karma. So you come in with a group sometimes to work out your relationship or group karma. I think it's very interesting. Now, the more lifetimes you have, maybe this is obvious, this is sort of like 2 + 2 = 4. The more lifetimes you have, the more karmic relationships you have. And what that means, karmic relationship, it means that the more lifetimes you have had, the more people in your life that you have known in other lifetimes. And sometimes, after you have lived enough lifetimes and you're really an old soul, it may be that almost, or maybe, I don't know if I could say everybody, but almost everybody that you are connected to, you've known before. Isn't that something? Now, let's look at the parameters of consciousness. And what do I mean by parameters of consciousness? What lends itself to the quality of your consciousness? What has influenced you to have the kind of consciousness you have? First of all, your evolution, like, are you human, Davic, or spatial? That has a great deal to do with your consciousness. Your soul development. How old are you as a soul? You know, the older you are as a soul, the more that affects your consciousness. Of course, the opposite is true. Being a very, very young soul also affects your consciousness. Your DNA defines your species, so that gives you definite boundaries, like you're unlikely to eat bananas and live in a tree if you're a human. That's not your species. Your bloodline. Now that's very interesting when you think about it, because your bloodline is within your DNA, but it's more specific. Like, we have the same general DNA because we're the same species, but our bloodlines are very different. And your bloodline specifies the exact traits you have. Like, you come in through your parents because you want certain traits. You want certain qualities. I'm sure, I know without a doubt, I came through my poor old, raggedy, dysfunctional family because I could be very psychic. I really know that. And you know, it's sort of like you take the good with the not so good when you choose a bloodline, and that's always true. But know this too, we each not only come through a bloodline to gain sort of specific qualities and talents or abilities, we also have the work and the responsibility of healing or clearing our bloodlines. And bloodlines have their, I call them ghosts. You know, there are things that haunt bloodlines. Certain families, there are disorders within those families. Pedophilia, criminal activity, certain diseases. So when you are within your bloodline, you are also working not only on your personal karma, you are also working on the karma of your bloodline. So, your gender, male, female, that has a lot to do with your consciousness. And know that everyone has a dominant and a subordinate gender. Like, if you're female, then your subordinate gender is male, but it's still there, or vice versa. So we all have, as women, we have our inner males and Men have their inner females. Your family dynamics, boy, isn't that a big one? That's, you know, some people never seem to overcome their family dynamics, and it becomes a fence around the parameters of their consciousness. Your karma, which are your gifts and your issues, but also your dharma, which is your mission. And these things influence your consciousness. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about, the time and the culture you come through has an enormous effect on your consciousness. And women today can vote. We can wear shorts, slacks, bikinis. I mean, we have a lot of freedom, even though there's a little question lately about some of that being threatened again. And maybe you know what I'm talking about with the some of the laws changing right now about women. But in general, women now, oh my gosh, our lives are so different than women 200-300 years ago. So I want you to think about all this, and we will be picking up on the last level of our lesson next time. Hope you've enjoyed it. So let us enter into a little guided meditation. And in this moment, just imagine that you are setting aside whatever you have been carrying, the burden, the responsibility, the heaviness. That in this moment, before you step into our meditation, you set this burden down, just like taking off a backpack. And begin to feel how much easier you can breathe. Begin to feel that greater lightness of being that you hold, without the burden, without the heaviness, without the responsibility. You can actually fly. And just let yourself feel that freedom. And let yourself fly wherever you want to go. If you can fly anywhere, where are you headed? And just notice this. What are you drawn to? And breathe into the freedom. Pay attention to where you go. Where are you drawn? What are you experiencing? Have fun. Experiment. Let yourself feel the lightness of being. You may soar high, you may soar low, or both. Perhaps you can see the wonder of this world or the universe. And now take in all that you have seen and all that you have experienced. And know that you can return to this freedom at any time. Just begin to allow yourself to return. find yourself safely anchored back in your physical body. When you are back, just begin to stretch or move or rub your hands together, touch your face. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Yeah, every now and then it's good to express your freedom. Take care.